Despite the threat of climate change, society has struggled to control its emissions of greenhouse gases. But now a so-called second front in climate change mitigation has emerged, and revived hopes that the most dangerous consequences of climate change can at least be delayed for several decades. It turns out that about 40% of current global warming can be attributed to four pollutants: methane, black carbon, ozone, and refrigerants. VEERABHADRAN, Ramanathan, and his colleagues have shown that by reducing the emission of these pollutants with currently available technologies, society can reduce the rate of warming by as much as 50% during our lifetimes. This could help slow down the melting of Himalayan glaciers and Arctic sea ice, as well as slowing sea level rise. A UN study prompted by Ramanathan's finding additionally found that control measures could save as many as 4 million lives a year through improvements to public health. The study also found that agricultural yields would improve. Ramanathan sees the concept as a win-win that helps people improve the quality of their lives while addressing a global problem. But like many scientists, he knows there are limits to how much he can tell people what to do. Late in his career, he has explored ways to get his message across without sacrificing his scientific authority. In 2007, he adopted a new outlook when his empirical and humanitarian worlds collided.
Early 2007, March, this meeting was organized by United Nations and was primarily for high school students from around the world. And it was held in the same meeting hall where the UN General Assembly is held. And I gave this talk about global warming and what we should do, how we can mitigate some of the disastrous changes. And at the end of my talk, there were, several questions, but one of them was from a student from Africa. I don't know exactly which country she was from. And she said, "Professor Ramanathan, you made such a passionate case that we should cut down global warming. Tell me what you are doing personally." And I was speechless. I had nothing to tell her, because until that point, I had not done anything personally. And that had just such an aha moment for me, and changed my life in many ways. I said, next time I meet her, I need to be able to tell her something.
Ramanathan is a distinguished climate and atmospheric scientist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. In a new phase of his career, he is combining science with social action. It has taken him beyond academia and journals. Over time, he has brought his message to legislators and even religious leaders, people who can reach society in ways he can't. In 2004, he accepted an invitation from Pope John Paul II to join the elite Pontifical Academy of Sciences, joining 80 other international scientists on issues of interest to the Catholic Church.
It was when I discovered that as scientists, we don't have the moral authority to tell people what to do. Even to the effect of telling people you should cut your CO2 emissions, or you should do this, you should do that. But spiritual leaders do. That's what religions have, that moral authority. So it was, to me, a personal realization that as a community we have not tapped in to an important source for solving some of our environmental problems. Use the moral authority of the religious, spiritual leaders.
In April 2012, Ramanathan received a special chance to interact with another religious leader with global clout when the 14th Dalai Lama visited San Diego. Ramanathan addressed the mutual duty of scientists and spiritual leaders in steering societal action. But it was afterwards that he received the surprise of a lifetime.
About a year ago is when I get a call from Scripps director's office saying, would I be interested in participating in an event with the Dalai Lama? To me, it was just a call from heaven. And of course I said yes. It was a big public event, and with close to a few thousand. And myself and another colleague, Professor Somerville, were involved in a dialogue with the Dalai Lama. And I took the opportunity to talk about this, that we can do something now about climate change, as leaders are still entangled in the CO2 issue to cut down the short-lived pollutants. And that message was received quite well by the Dalai Lama and the public. But the best was yet to come. So after the event, which lasted about an hour and 10 minutes, he turned around, held my hand here, and he said, I'm going to work on this problem for the rest of my life. And you can just imagine. Honestly, I would say I was a lot more excited, was really euphoric, much more than when my science paper was accepted 37 years ago.
I think his humanitarian concerns were always there. And I think he had a belief that if he just did his science and it was good enough, that people would see its quality as he did and see its importance as he did, and then it would automatically flow into social benefit. It didn't happen that way. Even his closest colleagues didn't recognize the value of the short-lived climate pollutants for quite a while. They understood its quality of the work, but not the value. And so I think as time passed, he realized that he had to carry his work farther and persuade people, actively persuade them of the social and human importance of the work that he was doing. And this regard took a step that a lot of scientists wouldn't, because once you get into this public arena, you can, of course, be accused of being biased and have an interest in certainly in many cases that's justified. And in this case, he has an interest too, but it's the welfare of humanity.
Ramanathan also achieved a personal breakthrough in translating his science to policy. He did so by reaching out to social scientists and economists, people well versed in the worlds of governance and diplomacy. He established strong ties with United Nations officials and began advocating his strategy for slowing down climate change in foreign policy journals.
I had published over 30, 40 papers on this topic for the last 35 years. But I didn't realize the power of publishing in journals which policymakers read. So we wrote a paper in 2009, teaming up with another scientist, and then the United Nations did an assessment of this problem. In my view, the whole thing culminated in on February 16th of 2012.
In February 2012, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced a multinational initiative to control emissions of short-lived climate pollutants, the climate change agents that Ramanathan had spent 40 years uncovering.
So when we discover effective and affordable ways to reduce global warming, not just a little, but by a lot, it is a call to action for all of us. Pollutants such as methane, black carbon or soot, hydrofluorocarbons. In the past few years, we've learned that this group contributes much more to climate change than we previously realized. More than 1/3 of current global warming is caused by short-lived pollutants.
Now, it's a small beginning, but we hope that it will grow. If you look at the situation not from the science community's point of view, but say from the world of international politics or the media, you see 20 years of effort on climate change at the public level, and it hasn't succeeded. And so the minute that people learn that there are other things that you can do about it, and you aren't doing it, a lot of people are going to conclude this problem isn't serious. And so by taking action now and doing what you can do now, You convince people it's a serious problem. We're starting to work on it. And it's also very significant that the United States took the lead. The United States of America took the lead on a climate issue.
So this whole approach of cutting down the short-lived climate pollutants to protect our generation and our children's generation, and in the next 10, 20 years starting to reduce the CO2 to protect our grandchildren, such that we leave behind a planet pretty close to the one we inherited, at least I inherited 65 years ago. That planet, I know from personal observations, was a lot cleaner than what we see now.
In Ramanathan's fourth decade of climate study, he has found himself as a catalyst for socioeconomic change. In his own field, however, his legacy has already been cast.
He is clearly at the same level as Scripps' greatest scientists historically. There's a pantheon of three at the present time that have had a profound effect on their discipline in the science: Roger Revelle, Dave Keeling, and Walter Munk. And I think 20 years from now they will put Ram as the fourth on that list.
There's no question about the fact that he has just made major contributions to the field. It's clear that there are a few climate scientists, if you will, whose names will be remembered for quite a long time. And it's clear also that Ram is in that category.